That's only the second time I've ever done that.
Oh, wow. Oh, should I
Yes.
just say got it?
So I have to ask you, Andrea, where are you?
Oh,
What's your
yes, I
background?
know. So this is the lobby of the Brown Hotel in Louisville, Kentucky, which is a historic hotel there. And when I did my master's program, this is like a block away from the school. And so we all got to stay in this really fancy hotel for like 2 weeks at a time every semester. And our rooms were, the price was reduced. And of course, I just took loans as part of the rooming. So I felt very much like Eloise at the Plaza, because I'm like, I'm living in a really fancy hotel. And then when I go to school, I come back and people have made my bed. It's fantastic.
Very, very nice.
It was really cool because like we always like spent all day doing like classes and workshops, but then people would just come in the lobby and hang out, and you would just recognize anyone with a name tag, and you just like people would have like literary discussions or play games, or there's a bar nearby, and it just became a really cool place to be. So I switched it up from the beach today. I haven't like really done like a big writer's workshop probably in a while. The last time I used to really do it was in school. So I was like, I'm feeling nostalgic. Like come to you from this hotel. And it's so funny because I did like 10 to 12 days at a time, 5 different times over the course of my 2-year degree. So I lived technically and not linearly, but like 2 months I lived in this hotel. It felt very fancy. The problem with living in a fancy hotel in which your cost is reduced is that the room service is still assuming that you're a rich person.
Yeah.
I remember one time I took a red eye because it was cheaper, and I'm like, I get there, I'm like, everything is closed. I'm not gonna walk to the McDonald's at midnight because it's dark, and I'm like, like even French fries on room service was like $10. I'm like, I'm hungry. Yeah, welcome Juliana. You just missed Kelly. She has something come up tonight with her family, so she couldn't come, but she came by to say hi and that she liked everyone's stories. That is also why Zoom told you that we are recording this so that we can send it to her. That way we can still briefly talk about her story, and then she can get some of the notes that we're going to do tonight. Yeah, before we get started, did anyone do anything cool this week?
We're going out of town tomorrow. We're visiting my 102-year-old grandma in Marin County.
Oh, wow.
Yes, she still lives in her original home, like that she's been there since the 60s. She still has all of her marbles, so she can.
That's great.
And we have helpers that come and help her physically and grocery shopping, meal preparation, make sure she's safe. So we're gonna go visit her for 2 days and hit up the beach. I think it's gonna be pretty cool.
It's awesome that she still has her house, because I'm sure it's expensive now to buy a house in Marin County, right? North of San Francisco or south?
It's north of San Francisco in Novato. And there hasn't been any updating to it. It has the original wallpaper, or it has had new carpet, but the wallpaper gets me because it's just, especially in the bathroom, one of the bathrooms, it's like this neon turquoise gold. It's so cool though.
That would be a very interesting like sensory detail to steal into a story and have someone have a bathroom that looks like that.
Yeah.
What year of
nice, like
the stove, the
60s
original
or
stove
70s?
is still there, and it's the one that has the little rectangle push buttons to for each burner for like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I don't know. It's really cool. It's caught on fire once.
That's very cool. Oh dear.
Yeah, but we've had it serviced, so it's okay now. But
my best friend is named Marin after the county because her parents used to live there, and she went to San Francisco State and she loved it because everyone knew how to say her name. Now here in Fresno, people call her Marin and Marin, and she's like, it's Marin. Wow, fun. Marcy and Carolyn, anything new or exciting this week?
Well, we have a funeral to go to on Thursday, which I'm not looking forward to. It's my husband's side of the family, and an 18-year-old, of course, unexpected.
Yeah.
So it's been really bad this month, and then it's this past weekend. You know, my husband had his birthday, so we had some people from out of town come in. So it's just been hectic.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry for your loss. I'm sure it's gonna be a hard day.
Yes, it's gonna be terrible. And then we don't really talk to my husband's sister very much, but I did text her. I told her I was very, very sorry that I can't even imagine losing a granddaughter. It's pretty bad, you know. Anyway,
I'm sorry. I'll be thinking about you.
oh, thank you, thank you.
Well, my big news is that I took a fall.
Oh, no.
Oh no.
Well, and you guys don't even know, but I had my hip replaced late November of last year. So this was my second fall. The first one, I was really worried that I had done something horrible to my hardware. This time it was in the stall with the horse, and the horse freaked out. I was by myself and I thought I was going to get trampled by the horse. So I had an exciting evening, but that happened last Wednesday. So I spent Thursday in the recliner.
Oh,
I'm
no.
feeling a little bit better now. I think today I'm almost like normal today. So. But yeah, it sounds like it's been kind of a weird, difficult week for a lot of people.
Yeah, no
Yeah.
kidding.
Sure, I feel bad about complaining about the heat. It's not the worst extent of my week. Is
Well,
it's a little hot and a little
In
bored.
10 days, we're really going to be complaining about the heat because I don't know if you've seen the extended forecast.
I'm afraid to look at
I
it.
think we're wearing blinders right now.
If I pretend it's not real, the weather won't happen.
Uh-oh. I see someone in the back there.
No, he's doing laundry. He's bringing my clean clothes to me.
Oh.
I'm not full. I have some laundry if he wants to.
I'll let him know. We'll put it on the list.
I don't pay that much, but you know. Very cool. Awesome. What did I do? I didn't do too much. I don't have, like I think I mentioned before, I didn't get any summer college classes, so my summer's a lot more open than normal. So I decided to drive around and deliver food for people to make some money. So
Oh, good.
we'll see if I like it. Kind of a stop and start kind of a thing. I tried it yesterday for the first time. I basically made $20 driving to church for Bible study because I left an hour early and then I ended up a block away. And I was like, cool. I would have came over here anyway. And instead, I grabbed you ramen on the way, and I grabbed this person Mexican, and then I was like, okay, we'll see.
And my granddaughter does that once in a great while. She gets bored and she's, well, maybe I'll do that.
Yeah, maybe I was like, I want to go to Disneyland, but I don't really have the money. But I'm like, maybe make a couple $100 doing this and cover just that trip.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah. In the daylight when it's safe. Oh my gosh, the very first one I ever did, I pulled into the wrong apartment complex and drove in circles until they messaged me. They're like, you're in the wrong spot. We're watching you on on our computer, and they can see the icon of where your car is. Just like you're off by like a block. I'm like,
Oh my gosh.
silly.
Funny.
All right. Well, yay, welcome to class. So like I said, our plan for today is we're gonna start with our workshop. So we all read our pieces, hopefully have some comments to make for each other. So how this will work is we'll have the author of the story, maybe not reread the whole thing, maybe just read like a paragraph or two to get us back in the mindset of the story, to hear something in the author's own voice. And then we will sort of talk about, first, we're going to talk about, we have to say at least some of the good things first. Remember, that's our challenge. And then we'll break into like suggestions for revision. The goal here is to finish this in 2 weeks, at least, as far finished as you would like to be. I know Juliana has a chapter of a novel, so I don't think you're going to give us the whole novel, right? In 2 weeks.
No, not unless you want it, but no, that's not in my
I'm willing to read it, but maybe not for class.
Yeah.
Maybe give us a chapter. So yeah, so that'll be fun. And then we're going to actually, I think I said it wrong or backwards last week in my mind of what I wanted to do. We're going to talk a little bit later in the second half of class about creative nonfiction and some of the things that make it a little bit different and similar to fiction. And we'll have one more tiny writing assignment, kind of like when you did a poem, for us to bring in next week. And then next week we'll talk about revision and everything you need going into that last week for our final celebration. Anybody dying to go first?
Oh, no, I'm not dying to go first.
Okay. Well, let me open it up. I'll screen share when the author is reading, just that we can all see it. If you have it nearby, if you printed it, probably a good thing to pull up.
Yeah, I printed up all of them, actually.
I didn't think about that. I didn't volunteer because I don't have it up in front of me. That's kind of weird. I should have.
I have it up on my computer and I have it up on my laptop. That's just kind of how it worked out when I was.
Yeah, no, for sure. I have it up and I have your guys' faces kind of in the corner. I'm like, okay, we got this. I got this.
If you want me to, I'll start.
Okay. Let me pull it up here. I know when I did this for school, you'd have a group of about, because we would take a whole week and we do like 2 people a day. Like every person would get an hour to talk
Oh,
about their
wow.
stuff. And everyone sent in like 15 pages and you had like 10 people and they're like, you should print this. And I'm like, okay. So I'm like mom at your work, like, can you print me 150 pages and then can we like hole punch them and put them in a binder? She's like, what are you printing? I'm like, I know.
Okay, who's
Basically.
going? So I could pull out.
Okay, we're gonna do Marcy first. We're gonna pull
Okay.
hers up. Hers was The Call, right?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that's tentatively what I
Yes.
called it. And I have to say, this is not, I mean, I fantasized about being mean to telemarketers a lot. So this is like,
I have a recommendation.
you know,
Yes, I have a
probably-
recommendation for you when I read this.
when all the telemarketing really started kind of up back probably close to like 2000 or maybe just a little bit before that, my husband kind of went off on a telemarketer once and we started getting hang up calls like starting right after that. And I think she actually was, I mean, we've never gotten telemarketer call or never gotten hang ups before like that. And I'll bet, I'm trying to remember back, but we just kind of, I stopped engaging with them after that. But it's always been kind of a fantasy after that because it was so annoying. I'm sure that that's who was calling us back and just hanging up on us. So that was just kind of strange.
So crazy. There's a podcast called Reply All, and you can listen to any episode, but you gotta listen to the episode's called Long Distance. There's 2 parts of it. This guy, he catches that it's a scam and he pretends to go along with it, kind of like your character. And he's recording it because he's kind of doing journalism here, and he lets him know that I know you're like messing with me, but he keeps calling the call center trying to like interview them and figure things out, and they're avoiding him, and he like keeps pretending to be different people and like doing things so he can catch them and what they're doing, and then he like flies to India to like continue his investigation of the call center, and it's just one big I know what you're doing and like trying to get one up on them by also like exposing what they're doing. It was insane.
Well,
wow.
you're supposed to be able to like, I think they can be fined and you can get paid if you can out them. And there's a way to turn them in. And I saw it on the news. There was a story about it. And they supposedly pay people like $500 in fees if they're caught. If you're on the do not call list. So if you're on the do not call list and they call you anyway, supposedly, but for a while after that, I did try to go along with it enough to try to figure out who they were so that I could then turn around and turn them in.
Yeah.
And my main thing was just getting them to stop because I can't get them to stop. You push whatever button it is for them not to call back, and that's just totally bogus. I don't think that's a real thing.
Anybody else? I know we gotta read your story, but anybody else get like people who like make clone copies of Facebook friends and then they refriend you, and you're like, I know this person, and then they start messaging you, and
Yes.
a lot of times they'll target like I don't know, like older people who haven't used their accounts very often, or who might they did it once with a relative of mine, and I was like, cool, this person died, so I know it's not him. Can you please go?
I hadn't heard that.
One of them was an older lady I used to work with at a bookstore, and I was like, this doesn't seem right, but I wasn't 100% sure, so I was trying to bait them. I was like, hey, how's the store? Right? And they're like, oh, the store's gone now. And I'm like, Barnes and Noble is not gone. I mean, it might be someday, but it's not. And I was pretty sure, and I was like, look, I know you're not my friend, but like, I'm going to report you if you can please leave her alone, or like leave her friends alone. And kind of like the story, they got mad at me. They're like, if you knew I was fake, why did you waste my time talking to me? Like,
Well, you know,
Yeah.
you take your chances sometimes.
Right?
What was the name of the podcast?
Oh, I'll put it in the chat too. The podcast was called Reply All. Oops, I'm typing it in your story. And then I believe it is episode, I think 101 or 102. It's called Long Distance.
Okay.
The-
I've got that written down so I can.
Yeah, it's a wild listen. You're just like, he even lets them like, he's crazy. He lets them like take over his computer for a bit. He's like, you're doing nothing. I see. They're like pretending, make it look scary. They have like commands up, and he's just like, whatever. It's a burner laptop, and everyone at work is like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm getting a story. Shush.
Yowzer.
All right, Miss Mercy, would you like to? Is there a part that you want to read, maybe the beginning or the end, or if anybody has a request of a part that you liked?
Well, I think the part where she's pretending. I don't know. Where do you want me to start?
Sure. Yeah, why don't you read this part right here? The bit where she is pretending to fall on the ground and the guy gets mad.
Okay. She looked at the display on the phone where the time was counting up. She'd kept him on the phone for over 6 minutes. She made her first move. She put the phone on speaker, picked up her old Joy of Cooking hardback, and dropped it. The book landed on the floor with a satisfying thud. Ow, she cried out as convincingly as she could. She took the phone off speaker and breathed deeply a few times, trying hard not to laugh. Oh no, I'm falling. She tried her best to sound pitiful. Are you near your computer, ma'am? She couldn't believe what she was hearing. She could be dying, and all that man cared about was taking her money. No, I'm not near my computer, she shouted into the phone, agitated. Didn't you hear? I've fallen and hurt myself. I can't get to my computer, and it's all your fault. I think I broke my hip. Aren't you going to help me? Of course I can't help you. I'm in a different country and a total stranger. What are you thinking, crazy old woman? And now I've wasted 10 minutes when I could be calling someone else.
My gosh.
That guy sucks. Awesome. Okay, so I invite the author to take a few minutes and just listen to get first impressions, and then feel free to jump in once we've talked for a bit. But Carolyn and Juliana, let's start with what we liked about this story.
Well, I thought it was
I'm sorry,
hilarious.
go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just saying I thought it was hilarious. I thought it was so funny and very relatable as well. My parents have a landline still at their home, and every couple of hours they get a scam call. And so if they ask for my mother, then I will say, well, this is she, or this is John's wife. How can I help you? So your story was very relatable. I thought it was really funny.
Thank you.
Yes, I did as well, because it is so true. And it's so sad that they always seem to hit the elderlies because they are home all the time, or they're retired like me, but we don't have landlines. But they seem to get you on your cell phone as well, and you could tell right away. I thought, sorry, I just clicked and then block that same number. But no matter what you block them, they always find your another number to call from, and you try and call them back and it's busy. It always seems to be busy. So to me, it's hard to even try and call them back. And then it gets frustrating because you're wasting your time just all the time. You're wasting your time. So it's frustrating, and there are people that do scam the elderly for thousands and thousands of dollars. My husband was just watching, I don't know if it was 2020, all the way across the world, these people are scamming the elderly. And it's so sad because they're just so gullible, very, very gullible.
I thought, did the narrator have a name, or is it just
No.
right? Okay. I wasn't sure. I'm like, I think that's right. So I like the narrator. I think she's like a very well realized character. Like, she doesn't feel like a flat character. Like, she has some depth. I'm actually, with her going through grief, I love that the opening is her talking to Simon, because it takes the reader a minute to realize that she's talking to a picture. Because at first you're like, wait, where's Simon? Oh,
Like, what happened to Simon? Yes. I thought that
Right,
was kind of sad too.
Yeah, but it's
Yes.
a great like kind of thing at the end, and like you see her like have this like moment of like, Phil's gotta be, yeah, I'm vindictive, yes, and she's having her like fun with revenge, and then she has that kind of change of heart at the end, and she goes through like a full little arc, and I like it.
So is there something you think I could do that I could change to do I need to change that in some way to make it better? To make people realize does it need to come out sooner or
No, I like that it's sort of like a because it really changes your perception is like switch going in like, oh, and I think that was actually a really cool moment to realize that about her character, that she talks to him, and the detail later when
Right.
she changes things, that every room of the house, like she can always see him,
Exactly.
you know.
Exactly.
And it's when she finds something else to live for, I guess. She doesn't want to let her moment of revenge go by, that she, for the first time, makes enough water for one teacup. Like you
Yeah.
can see that. Like she's a character with a lot of strength, that you can see those like I want to call it a weakness. I just want to call it like a struggle that she's going through. It makes her very realistic.
Yes, all women at that point when they lose their husband go through a time, and it is hard, you know.
yeah, I guess part of it was I watched my mom after my dad passed away. And she never did. She never did get, she just was starting. It was the saddest thing. Her first real outing, my dad had been dead for probably almost 2 years. And her first real outing, she went to the fabric store and she was on her way back. She had never had an accident before in her life. She was almost 80. And some guy pulled out in front of her, just driving down the road, and it totaled both of their cars. It wasn't her fault. And she ended up passing away like a month later
Oh
after
my
the hospital.
gosh.
Well, she was mistreated. She was sent home with her intestines in her chest and told to go to her doctor. And her doctor came in, was like, my God, what happened to you? Your intestines are in your chest. We have to get you to a surgeon right away. And the surgery, they scheduled her for a month, literally a month. And I begged her, I wanted to take her up to UCSF and she wouldn't do it. And 2 days before Christmas Eve, I had come up from going to the barn and I got a phone call. It's like, help me. And she was dead by the time we got there. And it was just, the saddest thing. But she had just started making that one little step towards getting past his death, but she never made it any farther than that. So I guess part of this is just kind of reliving some of the feelings that I got from her.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's sort of like a way to like write what you know, but not have to like relive experiences. You can just take like little memories and like add those details.
Yeah.
Anybody else feel like there was an allusion to the telltale heart? I really thought of Edgar Allan Poe, where she's like, the phone is ringing, it's under the pillow, and I can still hear it. That's what I wrote down in my notes. I wrote down telltale heart.
I didn't think about
that. I liked it. It made me think of it. I actually think, because she has this moment where she does like, because the only reason I use the word vindictive or revenge is because she eventually changes her mind. So maybe that's how she sees it. She's like, maybe I don't want to be mean to the scammers. I think it'd be cool to like show us, like you can add some length, but like show us a little bit instead of like a few days later, the next call came. Give us moments that maybe like, what can she do that like reveals that she has this like new frame of mind? I actually would love to see her practicing whatever the gunshot is, but like don't tell us that's what she's doing. So you're like, why is she doing that? And then when she does it, be like, oh, as a suggestion. But like I don't know, I think you can like add moments where it's like, I want to see what else is she doing? Like, how can you tell me this mindset is consuming her without saying that?
Okay.
Right. Or I think I wrote down the line too, I liked it, and then I went back, I'm like, oh, I like it, but I feel like it's one of those like cut your darling moments where she's like, she realized something was changing, and I'm like, yes, but I wonder if saying it is a little too on the nose. Like, can you show us with her actions or something that like so we can be like, oh, something seems different, because we kind of get a hint at that already, is her starting to like with the tea, like something is different. Like if you add like little vignettes of like what she is doing, I think that will paint the picture of that.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Other notes from Carolyn and Juliana?
I just said it just so true about the phone scamming, and women shouldn't depend on their husbands, for everything. Like it took her time to do what she needed to do, and it's so sad because it is true. I mean, I worked for a CPA firm and went over tax returns for the women, and they had just lost their husband, and they just fall apart, and it's so sad because they don't know what to do. They're lost, and it's so sad. And I feel for them. It's just like they don't know what to do. They need someone to help them. And then, women just go home and they don't know what to do because their husbands always did everything for them.
Yeah. I forgot Kelly had sent some notes too. So what Kelly had said for this one, she says, I like the description of grief. I felt like a lot was done to show what grief looked like. Yes, I don't want you to take my comment as you did telling the whole story, because there were moments where you had some great instinct too. And she pointed that out. Rather than just saying she was grieving, I can see her grieving. She said, I like the storyline. I was not expecting what happened as it went along, and it was a surprise, which was nice. So the overall impression was a neat short story. I think there are some lessons embedded in the story unrelated to scam telephone calls, which I think is also kind of like a good, like, right? It's not about scam telephone calls, really, if you're going to say what was this about, right? Even though that's what happened.
Right.
She says things were not what they seemed. It did not turn out that she really knew what she wanted because she thought she wanted to do this prank and discovered she hadn't wanted to. And there are learning moments, as was seen here.
Oh, that was nice.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Juliana, did I cut you off when I was about to read that? I feel like I did.
Nope, I didn't have anything else to add.
Cool.
Well, actually, I could tell you about, so someone tried to scam my grandma, the IRS, but not the IRS. She was in her 90s. But
Yeah.
she immediately caught on because, like I said, she still has all of her marbles. And so she let them carry it out. She, played into their hands on purpose and took down all the information. And she said that she would call them back, and then she called the police.
Oh, good for
And she
her.
offered to allow these scammers to come to her house to collect the money and have the police.
She's like, let's do a sting.
Oh no, she didn't, did she?
No, the police politely declined her offer.
I love it.
Oh my gosh.
Marcy, it's a testament to your story, how like relatable it was and real it felt, that everyone's like, I have a story just like this. Before we move on,
Most people in America do.
sadly. Did you consider this, like, was that the end that we saw, or is there more?
Yeah,
That
I
was the
was
end, right?
trying to think. I mean, you could take it longer, but I thought that was
No.
at the
Okay.
end
I
was-
thought so too, but I didn't want to misinterpret it. I was gonna ask what you guys thought of the ending. I wrote down, I'm a little bit torn because I love that it definitely surprised me. I was like, oh my gosh, right?
Yeah, I was surprised, very, very
I wonder-
surprised.
I don't know. To me, it almost feels like a slight tonal shift because she doesn't know, but I'm like, she just learned this lesson of like, I don't want to be mean. And then to know that she didn't know that, like, indirectly she was the cause of someone to kill themselves was a.
I know.
Well,
Jaw-dropping,
so-
yeah, huh?
when the first iteration of that, when I finished that, I did have her hear it, but then I didn't know where to go with it after that, because then it seemed to me it wasn't a short story anymore. Or where was it going to go after that? I mean, what would she do? Potentially she could be in trouble. That was my original thought, was that she was going to get in trouble with the police for ultimately causing, that either the police or somebody would sue her for. And I think that was entirely possible if the family of that woman found out who it was and found out that she had, done this on purpose, that you could potentially maybe file some kind of a civil suit. There's nothing stopping anybody from suing someone.
Yeah, and I think if she'd probably be emotionally devastated if she heard. So I don't necessarily think that I'd want her to know about it either. I'm kind of with you. I wonder if you could have maybe you guys could feel free to disagree with me. If the last image wasn't the suicide, but there's like another flash of like, I almost want like the ending line to be the paragraph before where it's like all this happens. It's like, but she was too busy shopping for plants or showing something that shows the character where she is. I don't know. I could be wrong. Something to play with, maybe.
I like that she didn't find out, because she was at a turning point in her life, and she was able to kind of overcome a little bit of her grief. And then at the end was really more a lesson for the readers to experience that, what kind of reform needs to happen against these scammers that come after us. So, I mean, it really made me think of it like a Twilight Zone or an Outer Limits kind of episode where, there's a lesson for the viewers to learn or something.
Right. Well, and also what's interesting is that, like, the callers are definitely like the antagonists throughout this, but the very end, like, one of them is humanized. She is this years old. This is her name. She has a teenage son. Because there are some people who like do the scamming because that's all, they didn't realize it was illegitimate, or they're trying to make ends meet, and it doesn't justify. But I don't know, it was an interesting moment to be like, oh, right. So that maybe someone doesn't go, I want to do that too. I know, it was interesting. Did you have any other?
Add single mother or something like that to it too, because the intent really was more of there are consequences to your actions, and some of these people with practical jokes that they play can actually, a practical joke could conceivably kill someone. I mean, it really could. If you frighten someone badly enough, they could fall, or, you never can tell, but.
Right. Yeah, Predator, all examples of pranks really bad. There used to be a comedian, I don't remember his name, who would record himself like pranking the telemarketers, and like somebody called him about a gravesites plot, and he goes, wow, it's great you called. I was actually just sitting here contemplating suicide, and you called. And like, he's trying to do that to the guy who's selling him the grave plot. But you think about, like, theoretically, who knows what that person's mental health was, and that could have really been triggering. And actually, the fact that she doesn't know, I think, adds to that, right? She just slept soundly for the first time in 2 years, and here's something that would really disrupt that. Did you have any questions as the author of a part of a story that we didn't touch?
No, I just think that it could be, I don't know, I just feel like I need to improve my writing skills in general. I mean, but it's
we'll talk about revision next week too, but like I said, the characterization is good, and like you have a nice, like, fully formed like arc and a plot. You can always go through and like look for like moments like, hey, can I add some of the things from our writer's toolbox? Like, this description was good. Can I add a detail here? Can I use an imagery? Is there a metaphor I can add? Those things might be helpful too.
Oh, did you think that the tsunami thing was too much? Was that?
No, I didn't think so. I think I wrote that down. Let me find it in the story. Tsunami. There we go. The truth of what she'd done broke over her like a tsunami, dragging her under and pummeling her with the detritus of all the horrible things she'd said to the poor woman. I don't think it's too much. What do you guys think? The reason for me, the reason why it's not too much is it still feels unique. I mean, I think there's a common, like, when it's a cliche, it doesn't usually work. And there's this idea of like, I feel like buried beneath the waves, but I don't know. To me, it was written in a unique way, right? There's a tsunami dragging her under and pummeling her.
Right.
It added a lot of weight, right? This is a weight of how she's feeling. Maybe that's why I felt so bad at the ending, because she felt really bad for what she did.
It would have felt really bad if.
Yes.
I think that would have been really devastating to her if she knew what the consequences of her actions.
Maybe you could. Maybe you can make it part of the news report, or it'd be interesting to parallel that, have the tsunami come back at the end. Either be like, we're going to tell you about the tsunami in Japan, but first, kind of like a reference, or you could even have the opposite right before, where she's like, it felt like the tsunami had finally lifted, like a reference to it. So then the ending kind of hits you even worse.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Right, using the same thing in multiple ways.
I'll try to work that into it.
Maybe something. That's one thing too. If you find something you did well, like, oh, that's a good image. Think, can I repeat the image, and can I repeat it like slightly different, right? Like, let's do it again, but like 2 degrees to the left, right? So you get the parallelism without it being a copy.
Okay.
Yeah, and it creates that symbolism. Cool. All right. Carolyn, you are next on my computer screen. Are you okay with going second?
Sure.
All right,
I have my
Carolyn,
story right here. I reprinted it big.
awesome.
Double space.
Is there a paragraph that you would like to read for us? And I'll put it on the screen.
Not really. I think maybe just starting at the very beginning
Sure,
to
yeah, why don't
say,
you read us those first two paragraphs?
okay. As Steve walks in a cold, dark room, knowing his grandfather had just passed away, he heads over behind his grandfather's huge desk, then stumbles into his latest notes. With deep sigh of sadness, it comes to his mind what his grandfather was working on. Steve's grandfather was a scientist, as this was also his passion. He starts to read them and sees his grandfather's findings are so interesting and shocking. He quickly gathers all the files and takes them to his office. Steve quickly calls his assistant, Marilyn. She answers, Steve, I'm so sorry to hear so sorry to hear about your grandfather's. My condolences. Steve replies, thank you, Marilyn. Actually, I'm calling because I need for you to set up a meeting with my co-scientist, Bear. Also, can you hire an appropriate team of people that can take us to the Amazon rainforest? Marilyn responded, well, I don't know what's going on, but I guess I will find out at the meeting. Steve knew everyone will know what's going on in a short time, but for now, he doesn't want anyone to know what's going on. He wants to accomplish something that his grandfather didn't.
Right. Thank you for reading that. It's always great to hear it in the author's own voice. So, like always, we're going to start with what are some of the things that we really liked, or what is our positive impressions?
I like so I'm a breast cancer survivor, and I'm always interested in stories about cancer and about, in this case, somebody potentially looking for a cure for cancer. I think it's something that's really interesting and timely to everyone. And talking about the Amazon and taking dangerous trips and things like that, those are all things that I think are appealing. They're things that are the Amazon is an important topic right now. And the one thing I would say, you're talking to somebody, I worked for almost 10 years at a poison control center. So I'm like a poison expert. And I would say that the list of the poisonous plants there at the end, those are things that are poisonous that are here, like in this area of the world and not in the Amazon.
Amazon so much,
So now I don't know, they might have some of those things in the Amazon, but they're common poisons here. And I think that having some sort of a that you fabricate, I think probably it would be better to fabricate some sort of of different plants from down there, that instead of using ones that we already know are poisonous. That's just, and that are up here. That's the first thought that came to my mind.
Oh, interesting. I actually had the thought too that I think you could benefit from just making some up that sound exciting, but not for, I had no idea these were all. I was just like, oh, my thought was, is tobacco poisonous?
Because, very poisonous.
No, okay. I did look up, but I just said the deadliest plants, but I didn't say where.
That's very interesting.
Yeah. So those are all deadly, and they're all here in this country, and maybe there are some in Mexico and stuff, but I'm not really sure they would be down there.
But if you wanted to make your story more exciting, you could have these people go to different places in the world in addition to the Amazon. So, but that, that's more research.
Right. And probably more length, because now they got to travel.
Right, exactly. Very good. Thank you.
But I agree. I think it's a fun premise. Like you said, like there's you know, there's this connection of like everyone, like this, the cure for cancer is like this thing that like, just as a collective, I think we'd all were like, kind of like, man, maybe someday. It's like one of those maybe somedays that like everyone knows, but there's also this like promise of adventure because we're going to physically go get it. And it's like the word danger and like, you know, finding things out.
Yes.
So it's a
yes.
promise of like a travel adventure story with, you know, science fiction in the fact that it's not real yet, but realistic enough that we're like, man, maybe, you know, wouldn't that be cool if it's like, it's not the same as like, and then they teleported, you know, kind of like science fiction. It's like there's a little bit of that, like, wouldn't that be cool?
Yes, really, really.
Juliana, opening thoughts here?
I'm sorry,
Oh, sorry. I said, did you have any opening thoughts?
for Carolyn. Yeah. I just had one thing that I was a little, maybe could be expanded on a little more. So why does Uncle Nick always want to know what's going on? Is he nosy, or does he think the job belongs to him? Is he jealous for some reason? So I did read a little bit in that, you know, further down in the same paragraph, that he had taken advantage of his grandfather.
Right.
But is it because he's greedy? Is he money hungry? Does he like?
I think he's everything. I think he's just jealous and wants to be included. And then plus he lives in a different country that he's just like away from the family. So he just wants to get in on everything.
Do you intend for him to like show up at the end and try to mess things up?
Well, that's a surprise.
Oh. I was gonna say, because I think that I think you should. I think there's a great tension set up with the meeting. Actually,
Exactly.
my suggestion here is, could you find a way to show us he's untrustworthy without actually saying Steve did not trust Uncle Nick, and then give us those details? Could you instead be like, you know, as he's asking, like, how can you make us feel uncomfortable? Like Steve kind of shrunk, he was like leaning over. How is he I don't know, standing or acting, like the emotions where it's like, from, you know, be more vague, but make us feel, instead of being like, he doesn't trust him, describe him in such a way that the reader on their own is like, I don't trust this guy.
Yeah, really, really. He doesn't like him anyway because of what he, you know, did to his grandfather, taking credit for something he shouldn't have.
Was the uncle there in person? Yes.
Yes, and
yes, okay,
the office. Yes.
Yeah. It's like, oh, okay. Yeah, so now you can like describe like the kind of details, like, you know, is Uncle Nick the kind of person who wears like a dark pinstripe suit, or is he like the kind, like, or very, you know, it's a different kind of person than like Uncle Nick was standing there in his khaki shorts and Hawaiian shirt. Like, you can add some details to let us know who he's like.
A slime ball, you know, I don't know.
Yeah, his hair was greasy, like
Frumpy jacket, I don't know.
No, that's a good thing. Yes, make him look really bad.
Yes, you know, maybe Nick is there and Uncle, you know, Nick like leans over with his arm, like kind of like in, like taking up Steve's body space and be like, so you want to tell me what's going on? Like that's kind of threatening, right?
Yes.
Some suggestions there.
Yes, very good.
You know, I had a boss once several years ago who he was this little man and very proper. I mean, he was dressed to the nines and his hair slicked back and everything. And for probably 2 or 3 months, everybody thought he was a really nice guy. And then somebody challenged him, and not like in a really negative way, but they just said something. It was something really stupid about the color of the chairs or something. We were ordering new chairs and they challenged him. And, you know, his face just started to turn purple. And then later on, we figured out that he's really like evil. He's like the Antichrist. We really figured this out. I mean, it was really a horrible thing.
Oh my gosh.
And it was at this poison control center I was working at. And it ended up with half of the veterinarians who worked there actually leaving, myself being one of them, because we couldn't stand it anymore. But we went to a meeting one time where he actually, the vein was throbbing on the side of his head. And I thought, and I just sat there and I had to look at this vein and it looked like it was a horn that was going to like pop out of his head. You
Oh
know,
my gosh.
things like that, you know, that make you think all you have to do is see like a horn trying to pop out of somebody's head and you kind of know a little bit about them.
Yeah.
But there's ways of describing people who are like really nasty and mean.
Okay,
Yeah.
that
But I
sounds
think,
good.
yeah, and they're probably like, as you're revising, some places you can take the time to like just even just a few lines, like maybe a few sentences in scene. When you give those details, it also makes the plot slow down a little bit, right? Because lots of things I feel like are happening quickly, so you can be like, you know,
Right, right.
how does Steve feel? Grandpa just died, but after 2 sentences, it's like, okay, we're good. I found papers. You know, even just like it doesn't have to be long, right? You know, I'm not making it into a novel. But just like adding little bits of imagery sometimes, like it makes the reader slow down, because instead of if you're thinking about like a camera instead of like a wide lens, you occasionally like narrow in and look at something specific. You know,
Right, right.
Steve took a deep breath. All those like characterization things.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how it ends.
Me too. Oh my gosh, it took a lot for me to do all this.
That's good. Well, no, that's awesome. Right? Steve has an excitement about him. Like I can tell that he's like. Also, I want to know why Steve has all these people. He can just like call people, and then like when we get there, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's like a whole room full of people.
Yeah, really.
Did you have questions for us or parts that you were iffy about that you wanted us to talk about?
No, I don't think so. Since it's only 3 pages, I
don't have a ton of notes too, but when I send out the PowerPoint tonight, I'll copy you guys my like little bullet points I have for each person, so you'll have that.
Okay, good, good, good.
Awesome. All right, then I guess Miss Juliana is next then. The
Sure.
first chapter or part of the first chapter of a novel. Let's see what's open up here. All right, is there a part that you would like to read, or would you like me to give you a part, or how are you feeling?
Just give me a part.
All right, let's read.
Which one was the most interesting for you?
Yeah, there's like so many different moments in this.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll ask the peanut gallery. Do you want to read about Kat or Morgan?
Morgan.
All right, let's read the part where Morgan is before she goes to bed, because I feel like it's a nice cliffhanger.
Yes.
So why don't you read from a clatter here to that page break?
Okay. A clatter startled them both as they looked up and realized they were being observed by their fathers. By then the meal was finished as the servants were clearing the table. With a look of disgust thrown at his father, Charles stalked from the dining room. Morgan dropped her hands in her lap, twisting the napkin and sighed despondently. She would not cry, she promised herself. Clearing his throat, Edward spoke. Perhaps it's time to retire. Of course, William thoroughly agreed, and the two bade each other good night. Maids came to show Morgan and William to their rooms. Head held high, Morgan marched stoically after the maid. The maid escorted Morgan into a stunningly beautiful room, gorgeous silk tapestries, a giant 4-poster bed with plump satiny comforters, old dark maple wood furniture carved with exquisite scrolls. A side table near the window held a beautiful bouquet of peach roses. Morgan stood in the center of the room, noticing her trunks had been brought up, as the maid quietly shut the door. As soon as she heard the door click, Morgan could hold back no longer. She flung herself on the plush bed in tears. This is what they had to look forward to, she thought feebly, and all she felt from Charles was contempt. Morgan cried herself to sleep, with her last thought being how lovely the roses smelled.
I was like, I wonder why that detail, and then the detail of relevance came up. All right, opening positive thoughts.
Well, I thought it started at a good place. It started with some drama. And yeah, so, there's sometimes when you start something and there's nothing going on, that's a little disconcerting. So this started with drama. I thought that was good. And this is fantasy, right? Typically,
Yeah, I guess it is.
would
I
you
don't
put it in that genre of fantasy?
I would, yeah, I think a publisher would put it in the fantasy genre. Yeah.
So a couple of the comments that I had about it was, I don't know. I don't know if it would be better to have some sort of a hint that it was fantasy at the beginning or not. I don't know.
Mhm.
I could see it going both ways,
Yeah.
whether it was a hint or not. I don't know. But it was a thought because I was a little surprised. At first, I thought it was just like a romance.
Yeah.
And got to farther down. Now you are in the first chapter, so I think it's probably okay start leaving it the way it is. But I don't know. I don't know. I guess that would just be something that I would say possibly play with. I don't know. And then the other thing is at the very beginning, I think you need to have some introduction to Kat.
That's what I thought too.
Yeah.
I thought, was Kat is real.
What
Kat
her
a person.
relationship is to Morgan earlier.
Okay.
Yes, I actually missed
Yeah.
on the first reading. On the second, I'm like, oh, they know each other because she said goodbye to Kat, but I didn't notice that at the first because I was like, okay, we have like parallel stories here, and then I'm like,
Yeah.
well, now it's like Kat knows who Morgan is. I'm not 100% sure what their relationship is.
They're friends. They grew up together. The original story didn't have this whole arranged marriage and Kat had to stay behind and her mother died. It was I wrote it in high school over 20 years ago, and it was a fairy tale story, and Morgan and Kat were like princesses and they were going to get married, and then they were kidnapped. And then the subsequent story, which is still in the chapter, but nobody died, and except for the bad guy, and everyone lived happily ever after, which we know is not always the case in real life. So I changed it up, and but I do see that Kat needs a little more background.
Yeah, because I thought it was really an interesting way of doing this with having her. You're not taking her from her beloved and kidnapping her or whatever. I thought that was really interesting that she wasn't sure that she liked this other guy. As a matter of fact, I think she's pretty sure she didn't like this other guy.
Yeah.
But then she gets thrown into, I mean, that's a lot different than what you normally would find in like a romance type of a novel or something. So
yeah, they don't need Prince Charming.
No. So anyway, I mean, she's got the other interest, but Charles is definitely something different. So I thought the things I really liked about it to start with were the fact that where it started, I thought that was a great beginning. And I thought that just the circumstances of taking like a bad situation and then going into another bad situation. I kind of like that. I actually kind of like that. So.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. And I would say too, for Kat, you don't have I don't want to lose the starting and the actions. You'll maybe only even a line or two, right? It's like she said, it was so hard to say goodbye to her childhood friend. Like, what do you say to someone after 10 years of growing up together? And Kat could just be like, this is not goodbye. A sentence or two like that.
Yeah.
I was when she gets kidnapped, I wasn't quite sure she had left the house because you had said she woke up tied up. And then you're like, she looked outside, and I'm like, oh, where is she? I thought Charles and his dad tied her up. I'm like, whoa, hold on.
I did too.
Okay.
I got a little bit confused as well. I should have read it twice, but I got a little bit confused.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm just nitpicking, but I'm like, oh, and it pulled me
So
out. I don't want to do that.
she was on a horse in the desert, and that was in my original fairy tale story. But it did this chapter 1 is not my best chapter of the whole novel that I have done. So yes, that's definitely something that,
Yeah, but I don't know. I don't know. I think I didn't think it was that much of a problem. I don't know. Yeah, we didn't know, but I don't know.
Yeah, no, I figured it out quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But I wasn't like, is she inside or outside? Yeah, but
I
I mean,
was
you tell
more-
us pretty sure.
I was more curious the whole time, who is Kat to Morgan? That's what I kept thinking about at the time. I kept trying to figure that out as we went through. Who is Kat to Morgan? And that's why I thought, yeah, if you just
Right,
said
and we know Kat's
Right.
important because of how
Yeah.
prominently she features.
right.
Right.
right. And she actually has a more, I would say, happier ending than Morgan later on in the novel. I mean, they're both still alive, so
Oh,
but as far as romance wise, Kat's story was definitely seemed to not be as rocky as Morgan's. So
right.
I liked the part that you read. I actually think I love the way you read it too, because you're like, and the last thing was the smell of roses. But without your tone of voice there, I don't know if everyone would always read it as like, ooh. I almost want you to like take a second and just add a couple more details, because my first thought was, I'm like, why is she thinking about roses? Right? And I love that it meant something. But because it's so important, I feel like you can even take a minute there and just be like, you know, she's angry, she's thinking, and it's just like, yeah, the roses are really strong in here, you know? Like, it's just like you see it, or you can see it like affecting her, and then like, huh. I
maybe
wonder
that's why
why.
she fell asleep so fast.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
In the original fairy tale story, Morgan and Catherine and their beloveds were receiving wedding gifts the day before the marriage, and a bunch of roses was the gift
I like it.
originally.
Yeah, and I love how you're
But
able
they
to
were
like
also
show
laced
elements.
with the poison to make her fall asleep faster. So.
I'm afraid to rewrite the story I did in high school, so I admire that you're able to come back and do it. Yeah, you did a really good job with the imagery. I think is really strong in the cat sections. Like there's like I can see it. I feel like when these things are happening to her. Yeah, there's a lot there. I think my last question was, I was a little bit concerned. Because Kat goes to like try and find Morgan, right?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
she like hears, but she's not 100% sure that she was kidnapped at this point, right? She's just like, oh, she disappeared, like she ran away. That seems odd, right?
Yeah.
I was wondering why is it because she had a dream about the ravens? Like it seemed a little bit like she had this like prophetic moment where I'm like, I don't know why she's thinking about that.
She just wanted, like with her mother now dead, there was nothing really tying her to stay in their little village. And she wanted to go to Kat, where her friend was. I mean, sorry, Kat wanted to go to Morgan.
Yes.
So Morgan set off on this little mini adventure of her own. And she was trying to I was trying to find the exact place in my chapter when she goes and she finds out that Morgan was missing. Where did it go?
Yeah, because I didn't know if she went to Corvinthus because she needed somewhere interesting to go, or if she thought Morgan was there.
I'm trying to remember why Kat's making that connection with that.
Because we, the reader, know there's some kind of connection because of the book. It came from the City of Ravens.
Well, I mean, I can put in there that she had a dream or something.
Yeah, you mentioned she had a dream. That's why I had one. I'm like, is she having a prophetic dream, or is it just a random dream? I wasn't 100% sure.
Yeah. Well, I mean, ultimately, that's where she does find Morgan, in the city of Corvanthus, and they finally meet up, and everything's all hunky-dory with them, but actually they do have a little bit of a rocky period, but not because of anything, not because of a disagreement, but more as Morgan just experienced this horrific thing in chapter 1, and it's kind of changed her. And Kat hasn't done anything in her life and is still the same old Kat.
Let me ask you, I guess, one last question. Is Brian and the kidnapping a big plot point throughout? Or is it just like a beginning thing and then there's another thing that happens?
There's another thing that happens, and then there's
Okay.
another thing, and there's another thing.
Because I was wondering, I feel like they got the book too easy. I feel like the solution came really quickly. Somebody appeared, I have the thing you need.
Yeah, the book disappears again later on in the story, and
Okay.
then I think it disappears another time, and they have to fetch it. I mean, the book and the piece of the crest, they both belong in the city of Corvanthus. So
Okay.
there's this whole like mythology that I've kind of created along with the book and the crest, and
Yeah.
so-
No, I'm very intrigued by all these objects. I'm over here like, I kind of want Morgan to work for it. Like, I want whoever this other girl was like, she can't do it off screen. This is so important. I don't know. I want her to go steal it or something. Feel free to disagree. Obviously, you're the author and you can disregard anything anybody says. Those are some thoughts. Okay, I'm talking too much. Marcy and Carolyn, did you have things you wanted to add?
Not really. I just agree with Marcy regarding the dialogue right off the bat, because it made it interesting. Like, you want to just keep reading, And then as I was reading, then I saw a cat and I thought, okay, was that a cat? A real cat? Or is that someone else I didn't get? But it made me just keep on reading to figure out who Cat was, and then I figured it out.
Yeah.
But no, it was really good and interesting, all the different parts that come into play in the story. So it was good. But that was really about it.
I think the whole theme, a lot of the themes about women and all of these things, and
Mhm.
women in power and stuff. And I don't know, my husband and I just, on the recommendation of somebody, started watching this show called The Morning Show. Has anyone seen that? With Reese Witherspoon and Jennifer Aniston. Oh
I
my
like that.
God. It's about women in power, and it is absolutely, Reese Witherspoon and Jennifer Aniston are just amazing in it. But I think there's like 10 episodes or something of it out there somewhere. I don't even know where my husband found this thing, online somewhere. And we've been watching it. And I think all these stories here, are well, not all of them, obviously Carolyn's isn't, but the other three are all kind of like a women themed stories. And I think they're really interesting.
Well, originally I described this book as a damsel in distress saves herself. And she really does, but it really turns into like kind of a teamwork kind of thing. But she doesn't, I think she doesn't want to rely on or have to have a man to do these things for her. And some pretty tragic things happen to her as this book goes on. And she just, is so resilient, and she just keeps on going. And when I did this huge rewrite a few years ago, my husband and I had recently separated the first time, and so I wrote out Morgan's husband.
Yeah, get him out of there.
And it just kind of, parallels real life. But actually in the story, which is kind of a spoiler alert, the bad guy kills him horribly. But it actually pushes her further to, keep on with the fight.
I think that's a theme that resonates with a lot of people right now. this idea of like, I don't need saving, I can save myself. There's a poetry collection, I've never read it, but it's called The Princess Saves Herself with this one. I always thought that was kind of funny, and it's like a thing that a lot of people are feeling empowered by, which is awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk briefly. I know she's not here, so maybe it won't be as long of a conversation as it would have been. But we are recording it for Kelly, so I want us to get a chance to share our thoughts. Kelly's had heavy subject matter, but I think it was handled in a good way. Like, it didn't make light of it, but it also like wasn't like, I don't know. It was like it thread the line between like heavy and not, like, I don't know. Heavy and not too heavy sounds like terrible writing, but hopefully you can kind of get what I'm meaning here. What are some of your guys' thoughts?
Well, it was kind of painful to read. However, only in the context that it's a, real child molestation situation. But it's something that should come out. And I think that she did a good job of handling it, of relating this story, or and she did it sensitively, and it wasn't graphic in any way.
Yes. Yeah, I agree, right? It can be hard to read stories like this, and so balancing that, I think, is what makes
it was hard for me to read like a second time, but it was a good story, very detailed. She did a good job, and too bad her parents, didn't believe her. She really had to struggle at that point, I think, and it was too bad. But then overall, later on, like she had to go through this with her sister, and I don't know, I just didn't like the whole story. I have to tell you the truth. It's sad. I even like when I get a jury duty, notice, I just hope it's not one of those cases, because I just can't do it. It's really hard. I even hate to hear things in the news like that, much less, read it.
Yeah, it can be
But
hard.
it's too bad that it does go on. It's something that does. But she did a good job doing the story and approaching her parents. That would have been hard. Too bad that they didn't recognize a bad situation right away, that it had to go on to her sister. And it is very, very sad, very, very sad.
Yeah.
But all in all, it was good.
Yeah, and that's the parent thing to me was like almost like the most, like, it's not the worst thing that happens, but it's like almost like the most angering in that moment, right? And I feel like I don't want to say like add details. We don't need to add like details about things that happen, but in like those moments of conversation where like I almost want to like slow down a little bit. Like kind of like I think I give this advice to somebody else where like what are you noticing in that moment? Like kind of like details I can add, like how they're feeling, what they're reacting, even does the character dissociate? Like I'm so in shock at this moment, I just like keep looking at the floor, like wow, the carpet, like like things that people do in like those moments of crisis.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, kudos for her for taking on a tough subject, I would say, to start with.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think even the first uncomfortable situation, I think you can add, so it's not just too much of like he said this, she said this, because right in the minute you have that moment of like, is this a weird insensitive joke or is this something serious? And I don't know, maybe adding just a little bit of those details, like to really show us. And there was something in there where I think someone said Kevin was stunned and unhappy when her friends confronted him, and I said, those like this was small moments. I'm like, show us. I want to see him stunned and unhappy. Like, what does he look like? Is it like jaw fall open or
Yeah.
fist?
Yeah.
I don't know, something like that. Little details.
Yeah, I think as a first draft going on, the comment that I had was that she needs to flesh out some more of the comings and goings, what's between, when they're doing one thing and then doing another thing, there needs to be some detail in there in between. That was my main comment about that.
And the what was the phrase? Oh my gosh, it just left me.
Senior
I
moment.
like how it started with like the present tense diary. I think it'd be cool if that present tense diary came back a few times.
Yes.
Yeah.
It
That's
also
a
might
good
help
one.
the reader feel a little bit more removed because it's not happening right now. Like we're decades later and we're having these flashbacks and we're processing it now. So like the main character feels like today Carly rather than past Carly.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Well, I had a couple of in Hunger Strike, and it had to come out, it seemed a little disjointed from the rest of the story to me. Especially it had to come out. Like, who was she talking to? What were the consequences? And also when she was on her hunger strike, did she, actually stop starving herself? Did she finally go back to eating normally? So I think just a little more expansion for those two sections.
Yeah, or reference them again later, like bring up that theme again.
Yeah, and then also the pool incident. Why were all the kids giving her the cold shoulder? Was it because she was just a loner, or was she an outcast for telling on Kevin?
Yeah,
Why did she not want to go to sleep that night when she got home?
Yeah, I don't know what happened there either.
Yeah. And then is there a reason why she's suddenly living at her aunt's house? Did her parents kick her out after the Kevin thing? And is this Kevin's mom or another aunt?
Good point. I don't. It's harder to like ask these questions when the author is not here. So Kelly, when you watch this, if you want to take a minute at the beginning of next class, we can certainly talk about it. Cool. Well, thank you guys. I think for our first workshop, it went well. Hopefully it wasn't. No one's traumatized, right? It was okay. I know it can be scary for some people to talk about their writing. I forgot, Carolyn and Juliana, to give you Kelly's feedback. So I'm going to put that in the chat so you can see what she sent me from her email. And then we are going to take a quick break, and then we'll come back and we'll talk a little bit about nonfiction before we head out for the night.
Okay.
So yeah, let's. Are we okay if we take a 5-minute break? Or do we all? Okay, so
Yeah.
see you at 7:35. We'll come back.
Okay.
And Kelly, if you're watching this later, just fast forward 5 minutes because we're not here.
Ay, ay, ay.
On Saturday at 1:30, they're taking David to a kid's race day. And they do have a room.
Did you go over your story yet? Didn't your class start at 6:15? No, I'm saying because it's already 7:35.
Better feed them though, or I'm not gonna be able to do this. They're gonna be loud. I don't know if you guys can hear my goats in the background.
Oh. They're no more destructive than Oliver, who's not in here right now, but who has disrupted many a class. Awesome. Okay, let me get to the top of our PowerPoint here. All right, today we're going to talk a little bit about creative nonfiction. So this is for when you want to tell some true life stories. There's a lot of overlap with fiction, which has sort of been the focus of the class, but as this is sort of an overview class and we did a poetry dip, I also wanted to do this one as well. So sometimes in writing it's called CNF for creative nonfiction. So not every piece of nonfiction is creative nonfiction, right? It's not just, a news report is not creative nonfiction. So creative nonfiction is a style of writing that in part is a narrative. It tells a story. And it shares a lot in common with fiction writing. So it will have characters. It has a setting, the place and time where things happen. It has a theme or a message. It still uses some of the things from our toolbox that we learned on Poetry Week. You can use imagery and metaphor, personification, how the writing sounds. All those things we've learned about still play a role here. And ultimately, you want to tell a captivating story, right? So the key thing I have here for CNF is that it makes use of your memory, your emotions, and your experience. We'll talk a little bit more in the next slide, but it's not the whole let me list everything that happened to me. It's like, let me pull out a memory or an emotion or something I've experienced and how can I pass on you know, a piece of that to my reader in a way that might be relatable for them, or to have them, you know, you're talking about yourself, but oftentimes the writing about yourself is holding up a mirror for other people to see themselves in you. That's sort of usually the goal here. So some differences between not just fiction and nonfiction, but creative nonfiction and then just any old nonfiction. So the basic difference I talked about, again, it's a story. Documentation versus dramatization. So unlike an autobiography where someone's like, let me tell you the whole life of somebody who lived, right? George Washington did the following things. A memoir or a short essay, which is like, you know, a true life story, is less concerned with getting every detail, like all the dates, everything that was exactly right, but wants to weave together the most important details, right? You're dramatizing it, you're making a story, you're, you know, doing those moments of zooming in and showing us. The writing is a little more intimate, right? Where an autobiography might feel more like a textbook, this is gonna give like those parts of the story that might not be told in a comprehensive, like, let me just get the facts down, right? The goal here is not necessarily to tell you what happened, but the goal is to reveal a theme, right? An emotion or an experience for the reader, and create for the reader to have an emotional revelation through the perspective of watching somebody else go through a scenario. Showing versus telling does not go away just because we go to nonfiction. So just like our fiction stories, the writer should do more than say this happened and then this happened and then this happened. You want to have those moments in scene where you add those sensory details, those figurative language to like create you know, they call it imagery for a reason. It creates an image. We can kind of see and experience a little bit of what's going on. The other key thing here is it's more narrow in scope. I'm using memoir as an example of people who write in whole books, but it works for short essays too. So, you know, memoirs or any kind of nonfiction, creative nonfiction focuses on an aspect of somebody's life. So usually a short time period or a similar experiences on the same theme, right? I could write you the autobiography of my life and just tell you a bunch of stuff that's happened in the past like 30 years. Or I could be like, you know, I'm going to tell you my freshman year in college could take up a whole book. It's usually more narrow, one experience. Or maybe I've dealt with anxiety my whole life, so I'm going to zoom in on like intense moments of panic and dealing with that, because that's kind of fits the theme and the message I want to shape here. So usually a creative nonfiction is you're zooming in on a particular memory or a particular like collection of memories to, again, looking at that first thing, make some kind of emotional experience for the reader. Similarly, what's cool about creative nonfiction and memoir is that a lot of times autobiographies are supposed to be about famous people, right? If you go to the biography section at Barnes & Noble, you're going to read about Walt Disney and Alexander Hamilton and all these things. But you look at the memoirs and who are these people, right? Creative nonfiction is for ordinary people. Anyone who has a story worth telling, which is all of you, can do creative nonfiction. One of my favorites is The Glass Castle, which was made into a very excellent movie, by Jeanette Walls. She's written a couple books since then, but you know, I wouldn't have known who she is outside of that book. So I don't want you to think, oh, I'm not important enough to write something about myself. Oftentimes, to me, at least, those are the ones that speak out more. There's a great quote here I had from the Institute for Writers. They said memoir is more or less a subset of autobiography. So while all memoirs are at their heart autobiographies, not all autobiographies or stories about yourself are memoirs. An autobiography is the story of an author's life, while a memoir is a sliver of that life. It's the difference between a whole cake and a slice of cake. Let me reveal a piece of who I am to you. You don't have to like say like, here's everything you need to know. I mean, all of my backstory is like, let me just, you know, you get like a little glimpse into somebody's life and what that can reveal from there. And then lastly, if you were to Google memoir in the dictionary, you get two distinct parts of the definition: a true account of something noteworthy. And noteworthy doesn't mean dramatic. I'll say this at the end when I kind of encourage you to write something. I think sometimes you find the more powerful like revelations in the seemingly mundane moments of life. I could tell you about, you know, my first day at Disneyland, which is exciting when I worked there, but you probably get a more interesting story out of my like 70 seconds a day at Disneyland, because there'll be something in those small moments, I think, that sometimes capture real struggles or real moments of change. A lot of times when we have struggle or change, they're not always loud and bombastic. They happen quietly and internally. So, noteworthy doesn't have to be like blockbuster film action worthy. As always, let me know if I'm going too fast or if you want me to slow down. All right. So some tips. Like, okay, I know what it is. I want to write it down. What are some tips? Tip number 1 is you still need to create character. You know, most of the time you are the character, right? You don't have to write in first person. Usually you do, right? I did this, I did that, but who is the I, right? What sliver of yourself are you showing? What parts of your experience can be emphasized or maybe left out? You know, to what degree do you want to be honest about the quality of your memory, your emotions? I think sometimes how you felt is probably more important than the specific details of like, you know, if you don't remember exactly what day it was, that's okay. What lens are you viewing your experiences? Are you writing from the point of view of how you felt then? Or are you writing from the point of view of you now reflecting back? Because that's going to read very differently in both scenarios. So what's your point of view here? Again, with showing, not telling, select those key moments to be in scene. In scene is like when you zoom in and you can, even though you're talking about the past, you can have dialogue and you can have all these things that we've talked about, right? You know, I'm telling you the story of I arrived at Disneyland, I did all the things, and oh my gosh, I couldn't find my ID card, and then all of a sudden it cuts to a security guard who's like, hey, you don't have, you know, like someone could be talking to me and I can be doing something, and then I can zoom out again. And just like a fiction, you still want to do that, right? And say which moments of detail, what zoom in moments are going to impact the theme, right? Or make the mood feel a certain way. Speaking of theme, think about your theme. Have one in mind. And what does your piece reveal about the nature of the theme? What question does your piece explore or hope to answer? I wrote a nonfiction essay once. It's not great. It's in college. It's in a box somewhere. And it talked a little bit about my fear of flying and also some struggles I was having like with like interpersonal relationships. And but the question I was exploring was like, you know, what happens when you're afraid, or what happens how do I deal with uncertainty? And is there a link in different scenarios? Like that was kind of like the big question here: fear, uncertainty, and what do you do about it? We talked about word choices before, but I said use powerful words, not more words. Sometimes less is more, right? Sometimes the simplest direct way to say it might be the more authentic way. You know, instead of saying I was, you know, really, really sad, could I say I was devastated? That encompasses that in one word. Oops, sorry. These are also good tips for fiction. So they overlap because they're both narrative. Cool. Okay. Details are important. I love details. They make writing different and interesting. I've been talking about like zooming in tonight because you can think of your story like a movie camera. Your writing can be cinematic. When am I zoom in and looking right at like something specific, and when am I zoomed out and paying attention to the surroundings? You know, you don't want to spend too long in one thing or the other. You want to kind of move the lens of the story around. Where are we? What are we looking at? What am I thinking about? There's a really good nonfiction book called Tell It Slant. It was the textbook I used in college when I took nonfiction. And I've always remembered that phrase. So what they mean by tell it slant, they don't mean lie, but there's this idea of, look, you can't include everything. So if you have a theme and you had a mood in mind, I'm only going to include the things I think are going to build towards that goal of mine. So the example here is if maybe I'm describing a test taking situation, and I want the reader to feel tense because the character or myself am nervous, I'm not excited. I could talk about how bright and sunny it is, but that's not a necessary detail. It's true, but it's not a lie to admit it. I want to focus instead on the loud air conditioning, the weird creaks in the door, the little things that make me, feel a certain way, like you're slanting the reader into that direction. There's a famous Emily Dickinson poem that starts off with "Tell the truth, but tell it slant." And I think that's where the idea of this came from.
Truth, tell it, man.
Let me go look up. And the reason why I write fiction, when you write fiction, this is great. You can make up any detail you want. Theoretically, as long as you're not lying. And it's okay to embellish a little bit, no one's gonna know. But creative nonfiction, you're kind of limited to the details that are there that you can see that actually happen. But it's just as important what you lead out, right? When you're picking details, you want to be selective. Don't try to cram them all in. Think about what purpose they're serving you. This is a quote I pulled online, but I liked it. Yeah, what you don't describe is just as important as what you do describe. Omission invites the reader to fill in some of the details for themselves. You don't talk about the weather, but they can maybe get a sense of like what would happen, right? In reality, I like this phrase, the reading is the first interactive game. Your reader is making pictures from your words, and you can take advantage of that. Like, what words am I going to give them this feeling and this image that I want them to create? Knowing that I don't have a photo, they're not going to know exactly what it looks like. And it's okay that it doesn't match exactly. I want them to get the message, the memory, the experience, the emotion out of it. So the question is, why am I using this detail? Does it have a purpose? And when in doubt, cut it out. I know I've been telling you all night to add details, but don't add them just for the sake of adding them. If you're like, if the story would be the same if I took this out, then maybe it's not the best detail to include. Maybe you can have one that's more significant. Okay, so goals to achieve all of this. Set one. What is your emotional goal, right? You have a theme. My theme here maybe is uncertainty. What is the emotional goal? I want the reader to experience uncertainty with me and maybe feel a relief at the end. That could be my goal. What details are going to create this? And then this idea of the slant description of detail. I'm going to tell the story slanted towards those details that serve my goal. I'm going to highlight those instead of everything. Nope. Go back. Okay, well, I'm getting button happy. Okay. Here's an example. So this is from, I found this on someone writing on the Artist Road blog, and she's describing herself on the street. She says, she looked out and she says, a man in a wide-brimmed fishing hat and wraparound sunglasses stares at me from his concrete porch, an oxygen tank on wheels beside him. I can't see his eyes. The man breathes in deeply when I exit the car, but then I cross the street away from his house and he visibly exhales. Okay, what details stand out? And more importantly, how do you feel reading this passage? Oh, Marcy, you're muted.
I wanted to drown out the goats.
Oh.
But
How do you feel reading it?
Well, I have to say I feel a little apprehensive. I don't.
Yeah.
You've got some guy, you can't see his eyes and breathing issues, and he's on wheels. He's got the oxygen tank next to him. I mean, it is kind of.
I mean, it feels a little creepy.
A little creepy, yeah.
Right? And even as something as simple as his concrete porch feels very unapproachable.
Yeah.
What's interesting is the author in the article goes on to say, this man is not a main character. He doesn't appear again, but it's just a couple sentences where that detail of I could have been like, I got out, it was a nice day, there was an old man sipping lemonade on the porch. And maybe that was also true, but I'm going to include these details because another more like apprehensive or unsettling experience is about to happen. And I'm almost like priming the reader by like, what about that day also can kind of add to that?
Well, yeah, I mean, the guy's reaction means that something's wrong.
Right? It's like, okay then. Maybe he wasn't holding his breath the whole time, but that's what it felt like. That's what I noticed. All right. The last thing we're going to talk about is a couple of different like fun ways to write creative nonfiction for us to try. But anyone have any questions on any of the things we just talked about? My invitation for you is to experiment with form a little bit. I'm going to give you a specific type of short writing to do over the week. You might be like, Andrea, why can't I just write whatever I want? So my reasoning here, I did my grad lecture on this, is that there is creativity in constraints. When you give yourself a rule to follow, you often think of things you might not have otherwise. And okay, we're supposed to come up all at once. This is a really good quote. It's from an article from Wired magazine that explains why. It was a whole article about creativity and why sometimes, you know, if you give an artist, here's a blank page, paint something, it might not be, you know, it'd be harder to be creative than if they gave themselves some rules ahead of time. So they say the brain is a neural tangle of near infinite possibility, which means that it spends a lot of time and energy choosing what not to notice, right? If I pay attention to everything in my room right now, I wouldn't be able to focus on talking to you guys. There's a lot, right? Your brain can do that. As a result, creativity is traded away for efficiency sometimes. We think in literal prose, not symbolist poetry. And this is why constraints are so important. It is not until we encounter unexpected hindrance, a challenge we can't easily resolve, efficiency, that the chains of cognition are loosened, are like easy, quick ways of thinking, giving us newfound access to the weird connections simmering in the unconscious. When your brain can't autopilot things because it's not how you normally think through something, that gives you a chance to be more creative. Okay, so this is just a sample of constraints. I'm not going to make you do this one, but feel free to try. There's a tradition of 6-word memoirs. People try to tell a story in just 6 words. Probably the most famous one is a sad one from Ernest Hemingway. Here's the entire short story. For sale, baby shoes, never worn. Right? And I don't mean to bum you out, but it's a famous story because in 6 words, he tells, like, you kind of get a whole image of like what happened here without a lot of detail. Here are some other ones from 2013. There's a calendar. I liked So Lost, had to Google myself. Find therapist, fired therapist, one mother is enough. I'm actually be interested to see what happened with the rest of that story. Your therapist is mothering you. Woke this morning exhausted by adulthood. So it's a fun thing people do, and there are some people who get published for these. Kind of, if you're ever like in a bind or you're bored, you have an extra spare minute, try to write a 6-word memoir. It's not too many, but you'll be surprised that you might have like a moment that you would not have said if you've given yourself like 1,000 words to write the same thing. I mean, Ernest Hemingway could have wrote the story of a baby who dies and, you know, I mean, a miscarriage and the family gets rid of the objects. But I wonder if it would hit the same way as seeing it like this, which almost feels neutral and detached and has like a horror all on its own. Okay. We're actually going to do what's called a hermit crab essay. It was invented by Brenda Miller, and this was her thoughts on creativity. She says, sometimes the more constraints we give ourselves, the more fun we can have. The rules give your intellectual mind something to concentrate on, and then your subconscious mind can come out to play. The time limit quiets the inner censor and forces you to keep writing whatever comes out. And then she also talked about, she developed it after reading a book. Nancy McCabe, who actually teaches at Spalding, where I got my master's, had a book called Can This Troubled Marriage Be Saved? And the entire book is sort of like a multiple choice questionnaire. Like she answers the question, and then of course she expands a little bit, right? But she asks and answers 11 questions, and you get these really short narratives summarizing the life of her marriage. And then Brenda Miller, here's a quote again, says it's engaging, honest, and witty. I could have just said, you know, here are some moments in my marriage, but she put it into this like almost like it's a test of questions and answers, and I have the answers, and it becomes really a story about her life. So that's when we get the phrase hermit crab. So what is a hermit crab essay? Just like a hermit crab goes onto the beach and finds a shell that's not its own, but it makes it home. Your story gets to find a shell of a different kind of writing and sort of wiggle its way in there and make a home. So you can write a whole story out of a to-do list, out of letters. That's a famous one. People have done that for a long time. A recipe. I had a friend that I roomed with in college. Her name was Ariel, and she wrote an essay called "How Not to Greet Someone Named Ariel," and it was just all these things about how people would, because she worked at Disneyland, and so her name is Ariel, and she works at Disneyland, and so people would be like, "Are you a mermaid?" And she's like, "No, actually, there's a Shakespeare character named Ariel, but I was also not named after that. It's just a nice name, but it was phrased as like a how-to kind of a thing. So you want to pick something that's not a story and kind of force the story into it. To have the story come out in this like kind of shell format. And I will show you some examples here. I'll give you a list. And normally if I wasn't temporarily in my parents' house, I would have the book to show you, but you can just look these books up on your own because they're all in my storage unit. But some fiction books that do this as well. If you need a good afternoon romance to read, Boy Next Door by Meg Cabot is told entirely in emails, which is interesting because you always like what character is talking to another, and you get usually accounts of like what happened already. Like, hey, you're late to work again, what happened? Or, oh my gosh, how did your date go last night? And it's all like told in emails, which is very interesting. The Lover's Dictionary is by David Levithan. It's like a dictionary. Every page is alphabetical. There's a word, and then like the definition is like a paragraph that gives you a hint of the story, sometimes out of order, about one chaotic relationship. There are pages like reconciliation, there are pages like forgiveness, pages like devastation. You get like hints of like what happens throughout the story, which is very interesting. And then young adult, there's a story called Me Being Me is Exactly as Insane as You Being You, and the entire thing is told in list form. And one that really struck me is it's the story of this kid whose parents are divorcing. His brother went away to college, and his dad tells him that one of the reasons they divorced is that he is homosexual. And he's like, oh my gosh. And so one of the pages early on, the page is called People Darren Feels Like He Can Talk to About What His Dad Just Told Him. And then there's a blank page. And the idea is there is no list. There's nobody I feel like I can talk to. Things Darren does when he's contemplating ditching school. And then you list out, so the story happens that way. So I like about stories like this, fiction and nonfiction, is that the story is unique. Like you don't always tell the story in the normal way, but there's something that's going to be that would not have come out if you didn't write it in the unique way you're going for. Like, it wouldn't have happened. Any questions before I show you an example?
Is this like a form of poetry though, in a way?
I mean, it can certainly feel like that. Depends on kind of like the hermit crab that you pick. Because sometimes you'll write in full sentences, sometimes you might write more briefly, and it might feel a little bit like poetry. All writing is poetic a little bit, right? If it sounds interesting, and it's kind of yeah. All right, so this is something I wrote. I'm gonna share with you guys. It is called the Green Belt Dictionary. So it's a dictionary entry. The Green Belt is a section in my old neighborhood that we called it that because there was a long stretch of green with a sidewalk down the middle. And this is the story of how I learned how to ride a bike, told in definitions. Bicycle, noun. Something a 7-year-old should probably already know how to ride, but it's exciting nonetheless. It is bright blue and pink with tassels that will dance in the wind as soon as she learns how to ride it. Crash, verb. What happens when the rider of a bicycle is too busy looking at trees? It turns out it's very easy to subconsciously twist the handlebars to face what you're staring at. Frustrated, adjective. How you feel after the 3rd time you crash your bicycle into a tree. Laughter, noun. Often comes from spectators of bicycle learning. When combined with frustration, can create a deadly combo. See embarrassed anger. Solution, noun. If you find that you need to stare at where you are going in life, try staring at something in the middle of your path. The line dividing the sidewalk is an excellent choice. Stability, noun. The feeling a 7-year-old gets after riding down the sidewalk multiple times successfully on her new bike. There is a remarkable lack of laughter. Trees, noun. Not to be looked at while riding a bike, avoid at all costs.
Very good.
But that is a true story. I hit like 3 trees and a light pole till someone's like, I was looking and like turning my body as I looked around, and they're like, just look in front of you, Andrea. yeah, I could have told it that way too, and it might have been good, but it being told this way has a different air, especially because I chose something humorous. Kind of the going from bicycle to crash has its own like level of humor, just by the shell that I put it in. And for curiosity, this is the place. This is where I learned how to ride a bike on Google Maps. We called it the green belt because it was just like a large strip of green around all the rest of the houses.
I was just wondering, how'd you pick the title, The Green Belt?
Yeah, that's the green belt. It's the definitions of the things that happened there.
Where is this? What
this
city
is
is this?
This is in Clovis, California, where I'm at.
Oh, it's in Clovis.
Yeah, I'm not in that house anymore, but
Oh,
I'm
I
actually
see
only
it.
like a block away from here. Yeah, this is
Oh.
Temperance Avenue. And my house was just right through there and a little bit to the left.
Oh,
All right. Here's your assignment, and good, we actually will have time after I go over this. I left the link here in case we didn't have time, but we're gonna read another example of a different shell, I guess. This person wrote in a bunch of rejection letters, stories of her life. But here's your assignment. So write a short, and it could be like one page, it could be, it doesn't have to be even long whole paragraphs, right? If you're doing something that looks like something else, try not to go over two. I don't want you to like spend too much time on it. But using this hermit crab essay style, so your essay can be in any form you would like. And don't overthink your subject matter, right? Sometimes the mundane moments of your life is where you might find relatable issues. So I'll give you some examples. Maybe you're going to do recipe for a bad date, and you'll have steps that say things like add 4 hours of outfit changes, or whatever the story of your bad date is. You can also make like a how-to. So for example, if you're going to say how to clean out your car, the note here is do not just tell me how to clean out your car, right? The details you choose here will be interesting. So, what is the story of you and who you are? So the example I gave, me cleaning out my car, is step 2, look at every single piece of paper 5 times before determining if you can bear to part with it. Then throw away nothing and move it all to the piles of paper you will definitely sort soon on your even messier desk. I just wouldn't be in a real how to clean your car kind of instruction, but it's how this person cleans their car. Let me tell you how it's done. This is what you do. Step 2, find a bunch of loose change and go to the gas station. Whatever it is that you do that. So yeah, have fun with it. Just like the poetry, don't take it too seriously. What's fun about experimenting is this is technically experimental writing, right? You're trying something a little outside your comfort zone. If you can, email it ahead of time, and I'll screen share it next time, or I can always allow us to screen share, but bring it and we'll open up by just having a short, informal reading. Any questions before we spend our last 10 minutes looking at this other example here? And I will, I don't need to see the question slide, even though it's cool. What if it let me go back? There we go. Oh, do you still see me?
Yes,
My screen went dark.
I can still see you.
How odd. I may lose you. I'm gonna try to fix it. There we go. It's fine. It just went black, and I'm like, hi. I will send you a copy of this either tonight or tomorrow. I'm gonna wait for the Zoom should give me to the recording so I can send it to Kelly, and I'll give you this slide set, and then with the assignment here on the last slide, and then I'll give you the little notes I made for your story. Right. Okay, well then our other example, if I can pull it up here. There we go. I had it and then I lost it. Here we go. We won't read the whole thing for time, but I'm going to show you another sample of what she did. And this is actually the lady who kind of came up with this idea as well. So it's called We Regret to Inform You. And if you ever want to read it in more detail, the link is also on that last slide. She says the following letters, though never written, are based on real events. And so she's going to go through bits of her life through the form of being rejected. So I'll read just a couple. Dear young artist, thank you for your attempt to draw a tree. We appreciate your efforts, especially the way you sat patiently on the sidewalk, gazing at that tree for an hour before setting pen to paper. and the many quick strokes of charcoal you executed with enthusiasm. But your smudges look nothing like a tree. In fact, they look like nothing at all. And the pleasure and pride you take in the work are not enough to redeem it. We are pleased to offer you remedial training in arts, but we cannot accept your drawing for display. With regret and best wishes, the art class, Ansdale Avenue Elementary School. Poor child, Brenda.
My gosh.
Dear ninth grade girl, we regret to inform you that no suitable match has been found to accompany you to the school dance. The volume of requests we receive makes individual feedback impossible, but please know that you were given careful consideration. Do feel free to attend on your own, perhaps with another rejectee, and stand awkwardly in the corner with a glass of warm punch in your sweaty hand. Watching others have a good time is excellent preparation for the roles you will play in the future. Best, the Boys Council of Henry Junior High. Dear 10th grader, thank you for your application to be the girlfriend of one of our star basketball players. As you can imagine, we've received hundreds of similar requests and so cannot possibly respond personally to everyone. This letter is to inform you that you have not been chosen for one of the coveted positions, but we do invite you to continue hanging around the lockers as if you belong there. This selfless act will help the team members learn the art of ignoring lovesick girls. Sincerely, the Granada Hills Highlanders. P.S. Though your brother is one of the star players, we could not take this familiar relationship into account. Sorry to say no. Please do try out for one of the rebound girlfriend positions in the future. She has those moments of her life, and then dear college dropout. This one I don't say I have to read it because it's a little sad. I don't know anyone's history, but she talks a little bit about a miscarriage here. So it starts off funny. She has moments to also use this to tell a serious story. Yeah, so I'll read this one instead. It's a little less sad, but it still shows that this form can be serious. Dear patient, we regret to inform you that due to reproductive abnormalities, you were not able to conceive children. Barren is not a word we use these days, but you may use it if you so choose. Your 2 miscarriages were merely symptoms of these abnormalities, which we surmise were acquired in utero. It's not your fault, but you may choose to take this as a misfortune, as a sign of God's displeasure, and torture yourself with guilt and self-loathing for many years to come.
Oh,
Oh
Yeah,
my
okay.
gosh.
Sorry, I guess a little harder to read. It's been a bit since I looked at it. But what's interesting, I think that's almost a good way to approach it, because if for her, maybe it might be hard to be honest and be like, hey, here's how bad I felt. Or it might be even harder for us to read it that way. And putting it here almost makes it feel like a safer read. It's in like a little container.
yeah.
At the end, she gets a dog. Where'd it go?
Oh,
A little happier. Congratulations on adopting your first dog. It's just kind of and it's interesting because it kind of talks about her like, this is her child that she has and how she feels with it, but it's a little bit more positive at the end. And I'm not going to read the whole thing because we're coming low on time, but hopefully that gives you another sense of like another form that you can put it into. I don't know, how did reading some of those feel to you, other than the one that I kind of threw at you that was hard to hear?
I guess they're just
Well,
like all
that's
different kinds.
it's very creative. I mean, people are very creative. You read some of this stuff and you think, geez, very talented.
Yeah, and this is a fun one. I tried a rejection letter once. It was kind of neat. I think I wrote one from the point of view of a class that behaved badly for me. It said, "Dear substitute teacher, we regret to inform you that you've not been recipients of our good behavior today. Although you are trying your best, we honestly just couldn't care less and would really rather have extra recess. So although you're trying to teach us math, I can't remember what the rest of it. Google hermit crab essays if you like a style. Feel free to steal the style from somebody else. Like, I want to try that for myself because it's still going to be different because you're going to tell a moment from, your life. It doesn't have to be a big thing, right? I talked about the terrible substitute I had earlier the day I wrote it. These kids were so bad. One of the girls actually wrote me an apology letter. She stayed after school to say, "Dear Miss Hawkins, I'm so sorry that we basically drove you to tears." And I felt bad because this little girl was so well behaved all day. And I'm like, and she's the only one who felt bad.
How old
Oh
were
my
these kids?
God.
Old enough. These were 5th graders. Oh my gosh. Some of them, they just, I was like, I don't have control of this classroom. I'm like, I don't know what to do. I'm nice. At one point, I'm like, do you guys like me? They're like, yeah. I'm like, then why? And they're like, oh, okay. And then I was
That's a
like, okay.
bad age.
Ooh. Yeah, some of those kids, I was like, there was one school, I'm like, I'm not coming back. At least I'm not doing it. I couldn't handle it. These
Well,
one
if you
kid, they
think
were,
about the way that these people are, the way these things go through, a lot of it's like how you think about things. I mean, that person writing the last set of rejection letters or whatever, I mean, that's probably how that's the sort of emotion that is playing through, and they're just putting down what they felt.
yeah. No, I think that's a really good observation where it's like, it's almost written lighthearted, but this could be someone who started off with like, you know what, misfortunes in my life, I feel like I'm always rejected. I don't pick my art project. I don't get a date to the dance. I can't get a boyfriend in high school, and all these things happen. And then when these bigger things happen, that theme of rejection comes up. And so she's like, you can even do that. Think of your theme first, right? What might lend yourself to this? You know, if I'm writing a story about like, you know, my struggle to stay organized, or a time when like my life felt out of control, I can write in a series of to-do lists, and like what gets crossed off and what doesn't lets you know what I accomplished over say the course of a week. And it's like, if every day make bed is uncrossed off, that lets you know without saying it, I was so busy I didn't even make the bed, or you know, or like it's crossed off one day, you're like, oh, why? You know. Yes,
Well, you know, sometimes if you're having a bad day and you go to do something and, you know, like you drop something and you're like, well, of course it's going to fall, you know, or of course it's going to be like that because every stinking thing has gone wrong the whole day.
Right.
So.
If I made a list, it'd be like, you know, today's to-do list, make to-do list, cross off, and then nothing uncrossed. Like, you know, go grocery shopping, do all the things, and then the things that are crossed off is like spill breakfast, burn coffee, and like all those things could be crossed off, things you wouldn't normally put on your list, but to show what actually happened that day. Right. I hope you have fun with it. You know, you struggle with it, you can let me know how, you know, through the week. I'm happy to help. But I think we've hit 8:15. Any lasting thoughts before we head out and maybe have dinner?
Winners is our stories due, finishing up.
Wait, so 2 weeks, right? Because we have 2 more classes and we're already done.
Yes.
Yeah, we've been doing it for 5 weeks now. So next week you're gonna bring me the short nonfiction piece. Then keep working on your story. We're gonna talk about revision next week, so you'll be able to go back again, kind of edit it, and then try to have something for the goal here is to have something finished by the 22nd when we meet for class, and we'll kind of have a celebration and maybe read them. It'll be fun.
Okay, very good.
Sounds good. I'll see you guys next week.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you very
you.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night.
Oh, what happened?
Bye, Kelly. Email me if you have any other questions or you want to meet up.